Hello composers, and we're back with another video. In this one, we're gonna keep looking at ways to create better melodies. And one way to make your melodies more memorable, more interesting, while increasing the emotional impact is to pay attention to the shape of your melody. Most memorable melodies have some kind of structure. They take you on a little roller coaster ride from the first note to the last, with a beginning, peak, and end. As a listener, you can sort of sense that they are going somewhere, and not just consist of notes moving in random motions. The melody evolves like a story, grabbing you from the start, bringing you up to a climatic point, and then back down home. In this video, we will look at a few ways to achieve a good structure and form in your melodies, but before we get into that, let's look at a few examples. We'll start by looking quickly at the Hedwig's theme from John Williams, that we briefly looked at in the melody breakdown video. You can see that we have the initial phrase and a similar variation in the first repetition. However, in the next phrase, the melody line starts as usual, but builds up to a top point in the melody, before it eases back down to the root note of the melody, E. The top point makes the melody more interesting and gives the listener a sense that the theme is evolving. The same thing is the case in Two Steps from Hell's To Glory. Here you can see that in a similar way, the melodic phrase is established in the three first repetitions, but at the ending it reaches a top point before it comes back down. Moving on to other iconic movie themes, you can see that this kind of melodic contour is the case in He's a Pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean as well. After a couple of repetitions establishing the melodic phrase, the melody moves up to reach a top point before it moves back down again. And in our popular music examples as well, this happens to be the case. You can see here that the similar thing is happening in Justin Bieber's Sorry. And again in Beatles' All You Need Is Love. You can see that a similar development of the melody is happening with a presentation and a repetition of the initial motif before it moves up towards a high point and then moves back down again. Using shape and contour is a very effective way to write better and more interesting melodies. It will also strengthen the emotional impact of your melody and make it more memorable. Bear in mind that melodies that start fairly high up in range might instead have a bottom point to create a climax, as it's more about contrast than anything else. Let's have a look at an example where I've tried to do the same and take a little melodic phrase, have it reach a top point and then move back again. Let's get into Cubase and have a look. So here you have a little melodic theme I've been making, and it's based on this little motif. Let's have a listen first and then look further at the shape of the melody line. And here you have the notation of the main melody that's going on here. And you can see that it starts with a little rhythmical and melodic motif that's being repeated once. And then in the third repetition, you can see that it's moving up towards a top point and then back down again to ground level. Now I also made a little other theme here that's doing the same thing but with a little bit simpler motif. Let's have a listen. And in a similar fashion here, you can see that initial motif is first presented, and then I've been moving it in a more downwards way to create a bit more contrast before in the third repetition it's moving up towards a climax and then moves back down and ends on the same note as we started with. So now let's try to summarize some of the characteristics of the melodies we have been looking at. First of all, they all start at some kind of ground level, introducing the melody phrase. Then it's usually repeated somehow in a similar range to further establish this ground level. some of the tracks move the second phrases a bit down to create an even bigger contrast to the top point that's following it. And then a top point is reached, creating a climax for the melody. Then after that, the melody is slowly rolling back down to ground level, rounding off the phrase. Now, play around with these principles, and remember that there are no real rules when it comes to melody shape and contour, but try to bring your listener on a little journey, include a top point, and then move back down again. And you might end up with some interesting results. I'll see you guys in the next video.